I never thought I'd become one of those people who say they didn't see it coming. But I didn't. I truly didn't. From the outside, our marriage looked ideal, 2 careers on the rise, a beautiful townhouse in Maple Hollow, and weekend brunches with mutual friends who always said we were the perfect couple. Her name is Claire, and for 7 years, I believed every word she said, every touch she offered, every promise she whispered in the dim light of our bedroom. We met in college, senior year. She was bold and sharp-witted, had this magnetic charm that made people hang on her every word. I fell hard, fast. So did she, at least. That's what she claimed. We married 2 years after graduation, and for a while, everything felt like a dream. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life full of photographs and memories, but somehow hollow at the core. I started noticing the little things first. Her phone became a fortress. The smile she gave me in the mornings, once natural and warm, felt delayed, calculated. She'd laugh at something on her screen and quickly lock it when I walked into the room. When I asked her what was so funny, she'd shrug and say, "Just a meme, nothing you'd get." I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it. Because admitting something was wrong would mean admitting I'd failed. And I wasn't ready to do that, not yet. I still remember the moment it changed. It was a Thursday night. She had one of her networking dinners. Normally, she'd be home by 9, but this time, midnight rolled around and nothing. No text. No call. Just silence. I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of my phone. At 12:42 a.m., the front door creaked open. She looked startled, like she'd walked into the wrong house. "You're up," she said, voice low. "Obviously," I replied, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Where were you?" She hesitated just long enough. "We had drinks after dinner. Time got away." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But something inside me shifted. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I drove to her office during lunch. Sat across the street in my car like some obsessed lunatic. That's when I saw him. Tall, confident, walking with her like they were more than colleagues. She laughed differently with him, softer, real. He placed his hand on the small of her back, and she didn't flinch. She welcomed it. My heart didn't break in that moment, it shattered. But instead of confronting her, I chose silence. I needed more than suspicion. I needed truth. Cold, undeniable, brutal truth. I began collecting proof, not because I wanted to ruin her, but because I needed to stop doubting myself. Doubt is corrosive. It eats away at your sense of reality, your self-worth. Every lie she told made me question if I was losing my mind. I wasn't. I created a folder on my laptop, hidden behind 3 layers of encryption. I labeled it Renovation Plans. Inside, I stored screenshots of text messages I pulled from her cloud backup. Photos of them together, arms around each other at bars, her head resting on his shoulder. One picture crushed me more than the rest. It was her, my wife, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. The kind of smile that used to belong to me. His name was Damian Cross. I looked him up, Harvard MBA, partner at a boutique consulting firm. No wife, no kids. His social media was polished, curated, like his life was a damn advertisement. He was everything I wasn't, or at least, everything I had stopped being. I studied his patterns, his routines. He parked 2 blocks from Claire's office. Always wore navy or charcoal suits. He had lunch at the same cafe 3 times a week. I was obsessed. I know how that sounds. But when your reality collapses, obsession feels like control. One evening, Claire was in the shower. I knew she'd left her phone in her purse. Hands trembling, I opened her bag and pulled it out. It was locked, of course, but she'd always used the same passcode our anniversary. She never changed it. The messages were there, and they weren't coded or discreet. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked incredible in that dress. Couldn't wait to get it off. When can I see you again?" And her replies, God, her replies. She talked to him the way she used to talk to me. Flirty, raw, intimate. I felt like an intruder in my own life, reading a stranger's script in a play I thought I'd written. That night, I couldn't even look at her. She came to bed like nothing happened, curled up beside me, kissed my shoulder. I lay there, stiff, trying not to shake from the rage boiling beneath my skin. I kept thinking, How long has this been going on? What else don't I know? And worse, what if she never planned to stop? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called in sick and drove to my brother's place on the edge of town. I needed space to think. Victor's never been one for drama, but he could tell something was wrong. "You look like hell," he said, handing me a beer before noon. I broke. I told him everything. I didn't expect him to believe me, but he did. Without judgment. Without saying I should just walk away. "You're not crazy," he said. "But you gotta figure out if you want to fix this, or destroy it." I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't ready to decide. But one thing was clear. Pretending everything was fine would destroy me faster than the affair ever could. The house felt colder when I got back. Maybe it was just me, or maybe it was the way Claire looked up from her laptop with that forced smile, like everything between us hadn't already cracked. "Feeling better?" she asked casually, like I'd only been gone for a short walk and not on the verge of collapsing under the weight of betrayal. "Yeah," I said, and that was it. The lie sat on my tongue like poison. I watched her closely that night. Every move she made felt rehearsed. The way she poured wine, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, even the way she laughed at her phone, always a second too long. Damien wasn't texting her that evening. I knew. I'd cloned her phone using a piece of spyware Victor helped me install. It was illegal. I didn't care. I wanted the truth, no matter how dirty I had to get to find it. And what I found was worse than I expected. They had a routine. Monday lunches. Thursday nights at a boutique hotel near the river. They called it their time bubble. Claire told me she was at yoga, or a late work meeting, or, once, helping her friend Natalie through a breakup. That one stung. Natalie had been in our wedding. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being lied to with precision, with artistry. Claire wasn't sloppy. She was skilled, calculated. I kept a straight face through all of it. Played the part of the loving husband. Let her think I was still blind. Meanwhile, every night I returned to the renovation plans folder, now brimming with data, maps of their rendezvous, audio from phone calls, and a growing list of potential leverage points. I became a ghost in my own home, studying the enemy across the dinner table. But I wasn't just angry. I was grieving. Every night, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the same question. When did I stop being enough? Was it after the miscarriage? After my promotion, when I started working late and traveling more? Was there a moment, some exact second, when Claire looked at me and decided she needed someone else? I'd never get that answer. But I knew one thing for sure. She'd made her choice. And I was about to make mine. One night, she was texting Damien again while pretending to read a book beside me. I asked her, "Do you think we're happy?" She blinked, thrown off. "What? Us?" I said. "Are we happy?" She smiled that too careful smile. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering," I replied, then kissed her cheek. She didn't pull away. She didn't lean in either. That was all I needed to know. The next morning, I booked an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I didn't sign anything yet, but I needed to know my options, what I stood to lose, what I could still protect. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was war, and I wasn't going to lose without a plan. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and fresh coffee. Her name was Marissa Drake, sharp, seasoned, and with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that made it clear she'd seen it all before. "You're not the first person to walk in here with that look," she said as I sat down. "And you won't be the last." I didn't smile. I handed her a folder with copies of everything I'd gathered, screenshots, dates, messages, photos. She flipped through it silently, her expression unreadable. "You've done more legwork than most clients," she said finally. "You sure you want to do this?" I hesitated. Not because I had doubts about Claire's betrayal, but because part of me still wanted to fix what had broken. 7 years. That's a long time to erase. "I'm not sure of anything," I admitted, "but I need to be ready." Marissa nodded. "Let's walk through your options. Just in case." We talked for over an hour. Finances. Assets. The house. The savings. I had no idea how much we had built together until I saw it all laid out like a map of our life. And how much of it I could lose if I played this wrong. Claire earned less than I did, which meant alimony was on the table. I'd likely have to leave the house, even if I proved infidelity. Unless, Marissa said, you want to play it differently. I looked up. Differently how? She leaned in. Let her be the one who burns it down publicly. Affairs like this, they always get messy if you nudge them just right. You've already got enough proof. All you need now is timing. I left her office with a strange sense of clarity. Not peace, not yet, but something that felt close. Like standing in a storm and finally seeing the road ahead through the rain. At home, I acted normal. I smiled when she asked about my day. I cooked dinner and poured wine. I even laughed at one of her stupid stories from work. And all the while, I imagined the exact moment I'd flip the table. Not yet, but soon. Meanwhile, Damien was slipping. He started texting her too much, calling during work hours, pushing for more time. He was falling. And Claire? She was slipping too, forgetting her lies, repeating herself, making tiny mistakes. That's how it always goes. The longer a secret stretches, the thinner it gets. Eventually, it tears. A week later, she told me she was going to a women's retreat with Natalie, just the two of them. I smiled, nodded, wished her a peaceful trip. Then I watched her pack lingerie I'd never seen before. At 3 a.m., I followed her to a rental cabin in Ridgeview. I stayed out of sight, camera in hand, heart numb. They greeted each other like a scene from a romance movie, his hand in her hair, her lips on his like she hadn't eaten in days. I filmed 10 minutes of footage. Enough for leverage. Enough for devastation. But as I stood there, freezing in the shadows, a thought hit me. I didn't just want to catch her. I wanted her to feel it. Every lie. Every second she made me doubt my worth. She wouldn't see it coming. And when it happened, it would be clean, public, unforgettable. After Ridgeview, I knew I had to pull back. I'd gathered more than enough. Anything further would be vengeance, not strategy. And I wasn't ready for vengeance, not yet. Back at home, Claire was glowing. She hummed while she unpacked, gave me a long kiss on the cheek, and told me it was exactly what I needed. I smiled and asked about the retreat. She painted a beautiful picture, hikes, meditation, deep conversations with Natalie. I nodded along, memorizing every lie. A few days later, I called Natalie. She sounded confused. We haven't talked in weeks, she said. Why? My grip tightened around the phone. Claire told me you went away together. Silence. Then, slowly. Oh, wow. I didn't know she was using my name for that. I'm sorry, Owen. Don't be, I replied, then hung up. I sat in the car for a long time after that, staring at the dashboard, heart thudding like a war drum. There it was, the final piece. I could destroy her. But something held me back. It was fear, maybe, or the last whisper of love. That night, I lay in bed beside her and tried to remember the version of her I once adored. The woman who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who held my hand during storms, who cried with me when we lost the baby. Was she ever real? Or had I just fallen in love with the lie? One night, I asked her if she still wanted kids. She looked at me like I'd asked something absurd. I don't know, she said. Maybe. Someday. Someday's running out, I said. We're not 25 anymore. Why are you bringing this up now? She snapped. Because I want to know if we still want the same life. She stared at me, then softened. Of course we do. Another lie. I turned away and closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. I was unraveling quietly, thread by thread, and she didn't even notice. Maybe that was the cruelest part, how easy it was for her to pretend. A week later, I saw them again. This time in public. A restaurant across town. Far enough to avoid bumping into someone familiar, but not far enough to escape my lens. I walked in, sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and waited. When Claire leaned over and kissed him, I took the photo. Just one. Clean. Perfect. It captured everything. Her betrayal. His arrogance. My silence. I didn't confront them. I simply left. Back home, I stared at the photo, zooming in on her expression. She looked alive. Electric. A version of herself she never showed me anymore. And maybe that hurt most of all. That night, I created a new folder on my laptop. This one wasn't called Renovation Plans. I named it Closure. Because that's what I was after now, not revenge. Not yet. I wanted a clean exit. A dignified retreat. Or so I told myself. But deep down, I was already planning something else. Something colder. The morning after I took that photo, Claire made pancakes. She only did that when she was trying to reset things, when she could feel distance growing between us and needed to pretend we were still close. She wore one of my old t-shirts, kissed me on the neck, asked if I wanted blueberries or chocolate chips. Chocolate, I muttered, barely meeting her eyes. Like old times, she said, smiling. Yeah, I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. Just like old times. It was surreal how effortlessly she danced through the lie. She was planning their next rendezvous while measuring flour, texting him while flipping pancakes. But I didn't stop her. I let her perform. And while she did, I planned the next phase. First, I spoke to Victor again. I told him I didn't want to go the legal route just yet. So what do you want? He asked. Truth, I said. But not just for me. He raised an eyebrow. You want to make it public. I want her to feel what I felt. The confusion. The shame. The doubt. He nodded slowly. You're getting close to a point of no return. I passed that point a long time ago. That weekend, I reached out to Natalie. I sent her a message. Can we talk? It's important. She agreed to meet at a cafe. I brought my laptop. I showed her the folder. The texts, the photos, the map of every lie. She didn't say a word until the end. Then she whispered, Jesus Christ, Owen. You've been used as an alibi, I said. Multiple times. Her face turned pale. And you want? What? For me to confront her? Not yet. Just be ready. When it happens, I want people to know who she really is. I want truth. No spin. No rewriting the past. She agreed. Uncomfortable, but honest. After she left, I stayed behind and opened a blank document. I began writing a letter. Not to Claire. To myself. A record of everything I'd endured. The gaslighting. The silence. The weight of pretending. I wasn't just documenting what she did. I was reminding myself what I had survived. Because the longer this went on, the easier it was to forget that I used to feel whole. That I used to trust. That I once believed love was enough. That night, Claire wore red lingerie to bed. The same set I saw in Ridgeview. I wondered if she thought it would seduce me or distract me. It did neither. I rolled over and told her I was tired. Is something wrong? She asked. Just work, I said. Lie for lie. Breath for breath. The next morning, she left early for a client brunch. I followed her. Not to Damien this time. To a hotel downtown. A new location. A fresh excuse. She was getting bolder. I parked nearby and waited. 3 hours later, she came out with him. Laughing. Glowing. I snapped another photo. I didn't need it for the folder. I needed it for the fire building inside me. And with every smile they shared, that fire got hotter. I didn't know exactly how I'd use the truth yet. But I knew this much. When I struck, it wouldn't be quiet. It's strange how easy it is to keep living inside a lie once you've seen through it. Like you're walking through a play where everyone else still thinks the scene is real. Claire continued acting like nothing was wrong. She left early, came home late, and filled the gaps with lazy affection, kisses on the cheek, a warm smile here and there, occasional half-hearted talks about planning a weekend getaway. I played my part too. I asked about her day, made coffee in the mornings, folded her laundry without a word. But under the surface, every moment was strategy. Observation. Timing. She thought she was in control, but she had no idea I was building something. Carefully, quietly, ruthlessly. I started documenting her lies in a journal, labeling them with timestamps and cross-referencing them with photos, screenshots, and phone activity. I built a timeline, not because I needed it to believe her betrayal, but because I needed her to see it one day, all of it, laid bare. Meanwhile, Damien wasn't hiding anymore. They were more public, more careless. I spotted them shopping together on a Saturday afternoon, walking out of a boutique with a shared bag. I watched from my car, unseen, calm. I didn't need confrontation. I needed evidence. The store had security cameras. I made a call. A friend from college worked in property management. 2 days later, I had the footage. I stared at the screen while they smiled and kissed like teenagers, like they had nothing to lose. Claire never looked over her shoulder. She never thought I'd be watching. That gave me the edge. While she plotted moments of passion, I was writing a script of exposure. I started testing the waters. At a dinner with friends, I mentioned how busy Claire had been lately, how she'd been spending a lot of time at work events. Natalie's eyes flicked to mine, then back to her plate. Subtle, but enough. At another event, I casually brought up Damien's name in a conversation with one of Claire's colleagues. "You know him?" I asked. "Claire's mentioned him a few times." The woman smiled uncomfortably. "Yeah, they, work together sometimes. He's around." That hesitation was all I needed. People knew, or they suspected, and the idea of it crawling into the edges of their social circle thrilled me more than I wanted to admit. One night, Victor called. "Still going through with it?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But soon. She's giving me everything I need without knowing it." "You sure you're not losing yourself in this?" "I already lost myself," I said. "Now I'm just rebuilding." And it was true. The version of me that existed before, naive, trusting, blindly devoted, that version was gone. In its place was someone colder, smarter, someone capable of smiling across the table while planning the collapse of a lie with surgical precision. Claire thought she was safe in the dark. She didn't realize I'd been standing in it longer than she had. And unlike her, I wasn't afraid of what I'd become inside it. 2 weeks later, Claire surprised me with tickets to a wine tasting. "Just us," she said, handing them to me like a peace offering. "We've both been so busy." I stared at the envelope. Was this guilt? Or an attempt to keep up the illusion? Either way, I nodded. "Sounds great." The place was 2 hours out of town, a vineyard wrapped in soft hills and expensive quiet. We drove in silence for most of the way, the kind of silence that used to be comfortable but now felt heavy, like we were dragging a dead version of our marriage behind us. She played soft music. I watched the road, hands steady on the wheel, mind racing. At the vineyard, she took my hand, smiled, led me through tastings like nothing was broken. She leaned into me when she laughed. She even whispered that we should get a room here sometime. I nearly choked on my wine. It was like watching a ghost reenact our life. I kept wondering, was she doing this to convince me, or herself? That night, after we returned home, she fell asleep quickly, worn out from the illusion. I sat in the living room with the last glass of red, staring at my laptop. I opened the closure folder, dragged in the new photos from the vineyard. Even here, in a place meant for reconnection, she hadn't stopped texting him. Between tastings, she'd stepped into the bathroom for 10 minutes. Her messages were clear. "I miss you. I wish it was you here instead." He replied, "Soon, baby. Be patient." Soon. That word stuck with me. What were they planning? A full exit? Was she going to leave me? The idea should have made me relieved. Instead, it made my blood run cold. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of how much more she might take with her when she left. My time, my name, my narrative. Claire would rewrite the story, make it seem like we grew apart or wanted different things. She'd polish her version until it gleamed. I couldn't let that happen. The truth deserved its own voice, and I would be the one to give it. That week, I began editing a video. Not a revenge montage, not a rage-fueled attack, something more subtle, methodical. I combined the footage, the texts, and the timeline. I added dates, captions, context. No commentary, just facts. Just her, in her own words and actions. It was hard to watch, even for me, but it was honest. Brutally so. I didn't know yet when I'd release it, or how, but it was ready. And once it was out there, there'd be no taking it back. A day later, Claire mentioned a business retreat, this time in Seattle. "It's important," she said. "Big clients. I'll be gone 3 days." I nodded slowly. "Want me to drop you at the airport?" She looked surprised, then touched my hand. "That'd be nice." She smiled, but her eyes were already somewhere else. On him, on their plans. I'd be the one dropping her off. And maybe, just maybe, I'd be the one picking up the pieces when she least expected it. I drove her to the airport on a gray Thursday morning. The kind of day that felt like the sky itself couldn't decide what it wanted. She wore a navy trench coat and heels too nice for a business retreat. Her suitcase was light, too light for 3 days. She smiled at me before getting out of the car. Thank you, Owen. I'll call you tonight, okay? Of course, I said, matching her warmth. She kissed my cheek and walked off. I watched her disappear into the terminal, then waited 5 minutes. I wasn't going home. I tailed her. Not all the way through security. I wasn't reckless. I parked and headed to a friend who worked in airport security. Another favor. Another stretch of legality. He owed me from years ago, and he didn't ask questions. Within an hour, I had confirmation. Claire's boarding pass wasn't for Seattle. It was for San Diego. I thanked him and walked back to my car, stomach coiled with something I couldn't name. So it was official. She wasn't just lying. She was reinventing her life in real time. A parallel version of herself that had no room for me. Later that day, I tracked her phone. She'd turned off her location, but not before it pinged once, from a boutique beachfront hotel. 5 stars. The kind of place you go when you're not worried about being seen, or when you're with someone who makes you feel invincible. That night, I sent a text. Hope the retreat's going well. Love you. She replied hours later. Long day. Exhausted. Love you too. I stared at her message, heart hollow. The lie didn't even sting anymore. It just echoed. I didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed the video again. Added one last photo, the San Diego hotel with the timestamp. A final nail. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted her to understand what it meant to erase someone slowly. Softly. With a smile. The next day, Victor called. You all right? Yeah, I lied. She's in San Diego? Not Seattle. You going to confront her? Not yet. So what then? I'm going to make sure when the truth lands. It's so heavy she can't walk through it. I spent the weekend rebuilding the video one last time. Clean cuts. Crisp audio. Clear dates. No room for doubt. I saved it under a new title, To Whom It May Concern. I didn't post it. Not yet. But I emailed it to myself with scheduled delivery to a list of people I'd selected carefully. Friends. Her colleagues. Natalie. Even Damien's firm partners. If anything happened to me, if I lost my nerve, if I got talked out of it, someone would still see the truth. A fuse was lit. I just hadn't picked the moment to let it burn. Sunday evening, Claire called. She sounded tired but content. I'm flying back tomorrow, she said. Can you pick me up? Of course, I said gently. I'll be there. And I would be. With a smile. And a storm waiting just beneath it. The next morning, I shaved. Put on her favorite cologne. Wore the navy sweater she always said made my eyes look dangerous. I wanted her to see the man she thought she'd discarded, the version of me she assumed was too slow, too soft, too trusting to notice. I arrived at the airport 10 minutes early. Parked. Waited. When Claire walked out of the terminal, wheeling her modest suitcase and scanning the crowd, she looked exactly as she had when I first met her, confident, radiant, untouchable. Her smile widened when she saw me. Hey, handsome, she said, leaning in to kiss me. I kissed her back, slow and deliberate. Good trip? I asked. Yeah. Productive, she lied. Tiring. You deserve some rest, I said, taking her bag. Let's go home. The drive was quiet, peaceful. I asked her small questions about the weather, the meetings, the food. She answered all of them like a script she'd memorized. I nodded, encouraging her, letting her believe she was still the author of her fantasy. That night, she fell asleep early. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching her. The rise and fall of her breath. The stillness of someone who thought they were safe. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I stood up, went to my office, and unlocked the drive where the video lived. I copied it onto a new USB. I labeled it with nothing but her name, Claire. The next morning, I left it on her vanity next to her perfume. I didn't say a word. I made coffee, ate in silence, and left for work like it was any other Monday. By noon, my phone vibrated. A single text from her. What is this? I didn't reply. 2 hours later, another message came through. We need to talk. Please. Still, I said nothing. That night, I arrived home to find her pacing in the living room. Her eyes were red. The USB drive was clutched in her hand like a weapon. You went through my phone, she said, voice shaking. You filmed me. No, I replied calmly. You filmed yourself. I just documented the truth. This is a violation. So is cheating. She took a step forward. You planned this? You were waiting. I was surviving. She stood there, stunned, like the air had left the room. I walked past her, poured a glass of water, and sat down. You lied to me for over a year. You made me doubt myself, question my sanity, watch you fall in love with someone else while I carried the weight of our life alone. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. It just stopped. My voice was ice. You don't get to rewrite this. She lowered her eyes. What now? I looked at her for a long moment. Now? You start being honest. Not just with me. With everyone. Her face paled. You didn't send it. Not yet. Owen, you'll tell them. Or I will. She collapsed into a chair, covering her face. For the first time, she looked small. Real. I never wanted to hurt you, she said. But you did. I stood. Now you get to choose if you'll keep running or finally face what you've done. I walked away, leaving her there in silence. For once, I wasn't the one broken. The silence that followed that night was unlike any we'd had before. It wasn't the cold distance of two people drifting apart. It was the charged stillness that hangs before a storm finally breaks. Claire barely spoke the next day. She moved through the house like a ghost, quiet and careful, as if afraid any noise might trigger something irreversible. I let her linger in that fear. She had earned it. That evening, she knocked gently on my office door. I didn't look up. Can we talk? I closed my laptop and gestured toward the chair across from me. She sat slowly, fingers fidgeting in her lap. I know you hate me right now, she began, but I want to try to make this right. There's no version of right where this didn't happen, Claire. I know that, but I want to try to fix things. To fix us. I leaned forward. You want to fix your reputation, not this marriage. That's not true, isn't it? Her voice caught. You said I had a choice. You do, I said. Tell the truth, or wait for it to come out without you. You wouldn't. I tilted my head. Are you willing to bet on that? Her eyes searched mine. She was still trying to find the man she used to manipulate. He wasn't there anymore. I'll tell Damien it's over, she said. I'll cut him off. You have my word. No, I said. You don't get to end this in the dark. You started it in secret. You'll finish it in the light. She looked like she wanted to protest, but couldn't. Deep down, she knew I was right. I gave her a deadline. 1 week. 7 days to come clean. To tell our friends. Her coworkers. To break her own story before I shattered it for her. Every day after that, I watched her unravel. She avoided calls. Dodged texts. She barely ate. I should have felt satisfied. But I didn't. Watching her fall apart didn't undo the nights I'd spent questioning my worth. It didn't erase the lies. The only thing it gave me was control. And maybe that was all I had left. On the 6th day, she told me she was ready. She was going to tell people. She asked me not to be present. This is something I need to do alone, she said. I agreed. Not out of mercy, but because I knew what came next had to be hers to carry. That evening, she left the house. I waited. 1 hour. 2. Then I checked the scheduled email. Still unsent. I hovered over the cancel button, wondering if I could stop what was already in motion. At 11:47 p.m., she came home. Pale. Shaking. I told them, she whispered. Natalie. My boss. A few others. And Damien? She nodded, barely. How did he take it? He's angry. Scared. He says I ruined everything. You did. She didn't argue. She simply stood there, undone. The walls of her life finally collapsed. I thought I'd feel something more. Power. Satisfaction. But mostly, I just felt empty. Like I'd been carrying this weight so long that letting it go left me hollow. I went to bed without another word. I didn't check if she followed. I didn't care. Truth had been spoken. But the damage, that was just beginning. In the days that followed, our house became a museum of discomfort. Every room echoed with the memory of what used to be a smile in the kitchen, a kiss in the hallway, laughter from the bedroom. Now there was only silence. Heavy. Dense. Claire moved like a guest, careful not to disturb me. I didn't stop her. She no longer belonged in the space we built together. The news had started to ripple. quietly, at first. A friend would cancel plans. A coworker of hers would send a vague, polite message. Then came the whispers. Claire told me she was removed from a key client project. Too much personal distraction, they said. She acted like it was temporary. I didn't correct her. I knew better. Truth corrodes, especially when it's been hidden too long. Damien, on the other hand, vanished. Completely. He stopped answering her messages, blocked her on social media, even changed his number. I only knew because I checked. She never spoke his name aloud, but I saw her staring at her phone late at night, her thumb hovering over messages she never sent. I wondered what hurt more for her, losing him or losing the illusion of control. Meanwhile, I began to rediscover myself. Slowly, I took longer walks. I met Victor for drinks. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. It sat beside me quietly, no longer leading me by the throat. One evening, I stood outside our house with a single suitcase and told her I was leaving for a while. I need space, I said, and I need to be away from this house to figure out who I am without you. She stood frozen in the doorway, mascara faded under her eyes. Are you coming back? I don't know. She reached for me, then stopped. I'm sorry, Owen. For everything. I was weak. I didn't think you'd ever find out. That's not an apology, I said. That's regret. It's not the same. I turned and walked to the car. My hands didn't shake when I closed the door. I drove to Victor's for the night. Slept in the guest room. Woke up to the sound of birds instead of anxiety. It felt foreign, but good. Claire texted me the next day. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I didn't reply. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some people only learn the weight of what they've broken once they're forced to sit with the ruins. That week, I began seeing a therapist. Not because of her, but because I needed to heal what she hadn't created, my deeper wounds, the ones she'd only torn open further. And I was beginning to see that healing wasn't about fixing the past. It was about protecting the future. Mine. Alone, if necessary. The affair was out. The damage was done. But what Claire didn't know, what no one knew, was that the most devastating blow was still to come. Because while she was bracing for forgiveness, I was preparing something else entirely. Claire called every other day, sometimes just to ask how I was, other times to beg me to come home. I kept the conversation short, neutral. I didn't want her to hear the resolve building in my voice. I didn't want her to sense the cold edge beneath every word. I wasn't coming back, not in the way she hoped. At work, I was finally focused again, clear-headed. My boss pulled me aside one morning to say I looked better. I gave a polite smile. No one knew the war I'd walked through, how close I'd come to losing myself completely. At night, I continued building what I'd started. Something more targeted, more public. A statement, not just about betrayal, but about erasure. About what it means when someone rewrites your shared life without your consent. I gathered the final pieces of documentation. I wasn't going to leak it anonymously. That was too cowardly. No, I was going to own it. Authored. Signed. Controlled. A confession letter, but not mine. Hers. Assembled from her own messages, her emails, her voice memos, carefully placed screenshots. I wasn't forging anything. I was just arranging the truth. A narrative she could never spin away. One evening, I asked Natalie to meet me. We sat in the corner of a small bar, dark and quiet. I handed her a copy of the letter and the accompanying file. I'm going to release this, I told her, but I wanted you to see it first. She read in silence. 10 minutes passed before she looked up. It's brutal, she said, but honest. That's all I've ever wanted. You sure this won't come back on you? I nodded. It's her story. I'm just the archivist. She placed the folder back on the table and said, if she thought she could hide in shame quietly, this will burn that illusion to the ground. Good. I paused. She tried to destroy me gently. Now I'm showing her what precision looks like. I didn't smile when I said it. I wasn't proud, just resolved. The next morning, I scheduled a release. A private link, password protected, sent only to a carefully chosen group. People who mattered, people who had believed the lie. I included a single line in the email. Before you judge me, Read everything. I gave Claire a copy too. Printed. Left it on her porch, wrapped in a plain envelope. She called me 30 minutes later, screaming, crying. How could you do this? You wrote it, I said. I just arranged the punctuation. You're trying to ruin me. No, I said. You ruined yourself. I'm just making sure you don't bury the evidence. She hung up. I sat in silence for a while after that, the weight of what I'd done sinking in. This wasn't revenge. This was a mirror. She had finally been forced to look. But even then, I knew the biggest reveal hadn't happened yet. Because while she scrambled to control the damage, I had already prepared the next piece. Something public, irrefutable, and timed with perfect cruelty. The fallout came faster than I expected. Within 24 hours of the release, the whispers turned to silence. Friends who once flooded Claire's posts with compliments went dark. Her office issued a vague internal statement about realigning personnel. Her name vanished from the leadership page. She hadn't even had time to spin her version. Truth moved faster than fiction when delivered cleanly. And mine had been surgical. She called 3 times that day. I didn't answer. Then she sent a message. I don't recognize the man you've become. I stared at it for a while before replying. You never took the time to know him. Her reply came an hour later. Congratulations. You've destroyed me. I deleted the message without reading further. I wasn't interested in her pain. I was only interested in the truth having a permanent place in the story. And it had found it. But the final act still waited. A moment she couldn't talk her way out of. A moment too public to spin, too raw to minimize. I'd chosen the setting carefully, a charity gala. One she helped organize every year. One where her name was printed on the program, next to a smiling bio. I knew she wouldn't miss it. I knew Damien would be there too. He wouldn't be sitting next to her, but he'd be close. These kinds of people didn't truly vanish. They just got quiet. I arrived early, dressed to match the room. Clean cut, polished, invisible in plain sight. I wasn't on the guest list, but I had a press badge, courtesy of an old college friend who owed me a favor. I brought nothing but a flash drive. And timing. When Claire took the stage to deliver opening remarks, I moved toward the AV booth. The technician was distracted, something about lighting misfires. I leaned in, calm, steady. Technical update, I said, handing over the drive. Last-minute video insert. Approved by the foundation director. He glanced at the label, just a file name. Thank you _finale.mp4. It'll play after her speech, I added. He nodded. I stepped away, back into the crowd, eyes on the stage. Claire looked beautiful, poised, controlled. Her voice didn't shake. She thanked donors, praised community leaders, spoke about resilience. The irony wasn't lost on me. And then, just as the applause began, the lights dimmed. The screen behind her flickered. And the video began. It wasn't the full version, just the right cut. Enough to show the timeline. The texts. The hotel logs. A few choice lines from Damien. And finally, a date-stamped image of her kissing him outside the Ridgeview cabin. No commentary. Just silence. Then a single sentence. The truth always arrives, whether invited or not. Gasps rippled across the room. Claire turned, stunned, pale. The microphone slipped from her hand. Someone cut the feed. Too late. The damage was done. No one applauded. No one moved. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I watched from the edge of the room, still unnoticed. And then I turned and walked out. She had made her choices. Now the world had witnessed them. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because there was still one more step. The part she never saw coming. The days that followed were a slow-motion collapse. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the quiet disintegration of a woman who had spent years curating her image, only to watch it dissolve in a few brutal minutes. The video spread beyond the gala. Someone had filmed the moment it played. Claire frozen on stage, her face drained, the audience stunned. It went viral, not on the mainstream sites, but in the circles that mattered to her, professional groups, alumni forums, neighborhood threads. The ones where reputation wasn't built overnight, but could be ruined in seconds. Her phone stopped ringing. Her inbox went silent. Clients dropped her. The nonprofit removed her from all communications. She resigned the next morning, citing personal matters. I didn't respond to the news. I just watched from a distance, detached. But something in me stirred when I saw her standing outside our home 2 days later, suitcase in hand. No makeup, hair tied back. The same woman, yet completely different. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside wordlessly. She walked in like a stranger, eyes scanning the furniture like it all belonged to someone else now. "Maybe it did. I won't stay long," she said. I wanted to explain. I sat on the edge of the couch and nodded once. "You don't have to. But I want to." She paused. "You were right. I was building a version of myself I didn't recognize. I thought I could balance both lives. I thought I could have you and still chase whatever it was Damien gave me. But it was a fantasy. I see that now. You're just sorry it cost you everything." "That too," she admitted. "But mostly I'm sorry I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." I stared at her for a long moment. "You didn't lose me when you cheated, Claire. You lost me when you let me carry the weight of your lies, day after day, while smiling like nothing was broken." Her voice cracked. "So this is it. It's been it for a long time. You just didn't notice." She nodded. "Where will you go?" "My sister's," she said. "Just for a while." "Good." We stood in silence, an ocean between us and the living room we once decorated together. Then she asked, quietly, "Did you ever love me? Even after you found out?" "Yes," I said. "That was the hardest part." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Are you going to keep destroying me?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the sleepless nights, the way her betrayal infected everything, even the good memories. Then I said, "That depends on what you do next." She didn't argue. She simply walked out. And I was alone. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. But there was one more thing I had to do. Something I'd saved not out of rage, but strategy. Something I'd planned for the moment she thought it was over. It was time to make sure Damien felt the fire too. Because he wasn't just a participant, he was a co-conspirator. And he had his own empire built on the illusion of integrity. I opened my laptop, pulled up the second package, the one marked Cross. I smiled. Cold, calm, ready. Damien Cross had always struck me as the kind of man who thought consequences were for other people. Polished, untouchable, dripping with curated charm. He lived in a glass tower, both literally and figuratively. Partner at a high-end firm, guest speaker at leadership panels, a regular feature in men-to-watch lists. I figured it was only fair someone finally watched him. Closely. I spent the final weeks preparing the dossier. Nothing embellished. Just facts. Emails. Screenshots. Timeline overlaps. Hotel records. One of the documents even had his firm's conference room calendar showing he was out sick on the same dates he was retreating with Claire. I traced the funds from his firm card. One dinner, one boutique gift. Sloppy. Predictable. Enough to raise eyebrows in the right places. And that's exactly where I sent it. I didn't post it online. I sent it directly to the firm's board, then to the compliance department, then to a journalist I knew, an investigative writer with a quiet obsession for power and infidelity. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Within 3 days, the firm scrubbed Damien's name from their site. Internal review, they called it. I watched from afar as his empire quietly trembled. Whispers in business circles. Invitations rescinded. Podcasts pulled down. I'd erased him with the same scalpel he once used to cut into my life. Claire texted me when she found out. "You didn't have to go after him." I replied only once. "You were both architects of this. Now you both live in the rubble." I blocked her after that. There was nothing left to say. In the quiet that followed, I moved out of the house. Left behind the furniture, the photographs, the air soaked in betrayal. I signed a lease on a small apartment downtown. Clean walls. New keys. No ghosts. Victor helped me move. "You sure this is the end?" he asked, hauling the last box inside. I looked around the place, bare, sunlit, still. "Yeah," I said. "It's over." But what I didn't say was this. It wasn't revenge that gave me peace. It was finally stepping out of the story someone else had been writing for me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. I started seeing the world differently. Not softer, sharper, wiser. I went back to therapy. I started running again. I read books that had collected dust for years. I smiled without waiting for it to fade. One night, I stood on my balcony, wine in hand, city lights flickering below, and I thought of everything that had happened. The lies, the affair, the storm. And then I whispered aloud, like a benediction, like a final chapter closing on its own. She took my trust. But I took my voice back. And just like that, it was done.